everyone, and welcome to my channel, Sewing with Nightmare. In today's video, we're going to finish up my unfinished project, and we're going to work on this medieval shirt for my boyfriend. So this is the pattern that I use, and I'll link it in the description below. I got it off of Etsy, and I'm making it in a brownish black linen, 100% linen. So let's get started. So the first step in this project was obviously to cut out all the pattern pieces and then also to prepare the collar and the interfacing and the cuffs. So I think that I had already sewn the collar, and in this part I'm sewing the cuffs. But if you look closely, you can see that I have actually made a mistake in sewing these cuffs, and you'll see in just a minute when I realize that I made a boo-boo. And right here is where I realize that I'm sewing them completely wrong. Instead of sewing them right sides together, I sewed them wrong sides together and obviously would not be able to turn them. So out comes the seam ripper. And here I am sewing them the correct way, and then afterwards I will clip the corners and turn them so that they are right side out for the cuffs. In this clip you can see that I am sewing the bias binding. It's not really truly bias, it wasn't cut on the bias, but it is binding, and this is used for the tie on the closure. So you just fold it in half and then fold those raw edges inside and then close that seam up. And then like I said, that's used for the tie that is on the front of the shirt. In this clip I am edge finishing the center slit facing, so I'm going around and zigzagging the curved side of that piece. So after that's been finished, I'm attaching that piece to the front with the right sides together on the front of the shirt. So once I was done attaching the slit facing, I understitched around the slit facing, but only part of the way down because you don't want to get too close to that sharp turn that you have there, or else it's going to pucker and look weird. So I went about almost to the turn and then came back the other way, understitching along it. Once I was done with that, I pressed it open and then I top stitched. And in this clip, I believe I am pinning the shoulder seams together and then sewing them. After I sewed the shoulder seams, I pressed the seam to one side, trimmed one side of that seam, and then felled it down. The pattern calls for top stitching, but since this is linen, it's going to fray really badly if you don't do some sort of a seam finishing method. And so my seam finishing method of choice for this particular project was to fell it so that it had that top stitching as well, since the pattern had already asked us to top stitch. So I just went ahead and did that so that all the seam edges are completely enclosed. And here you can see this is me felling down both of those seams so that everything is enclosed and the finished garment won't have any issues with fraying. And here you can see that Nightmare has come to visit and supervise. He has to take a closer look and make sure that my work is all up to his standard. And here he is requesting snuggles too. In this clip, I am sewing the arm to the armhole, but it has you do it open. So you sew the arm to the armhole area while none of the seams are closed yet. So sew the sleeve to the armhole with right sides together, making sure that the two notches are facing the back side and the one notch is facing the front side. Stitch at 3/8 inch seam allowance, then serge zigzags the raw edges. So I think on here I did a felled seam because it was still completely open, so that was a possibility, as opposed to closing your side seams and then putting the arm in the armhole like you would normally do in most modern patterns. After you do this to both sides, obviously you're going to put the arm on the armhole, then you sew up the side seam and all the way to the arm, through the underarm, down the sleeve. So in this clip, I'm going to show you how I felled down the shoulder seam here. However, I apparently did not get any footage of actually doing it, but I mean, that's not super exciting anyway. But you can see the finished product. I felled it down on the shoulder seam here. If you can see, it's nice and flat and there's no raw edges. And it just looks like a top stitch. And then after that, I go ahead and do the same thing to both sides, and then I'm going to do the side seam and the seam all the way down the arm. And then after I do that, I felled down the side seam, but not the arm seam, the seam down the entire arm. That would have been pretty impossible to do. So for that finishing, I just did a zigzag stitch as it suggested. But I did fell down the entire side seam from the armpit down to the end of the garment. And here I am zigzagging that seam on the arm, but then right after this, the next step was to open up the slit, which they never tell you to make sure that you leave a slit in the arm for the cuff and the button that's supposed to go there. So out comes the seam ripper again, and you'll see that shortly. And then after this, I went ahead and did the exact same thing for the other side. And here is the zigzag stitching that you can see I just did, and the felling of the bottom part, the arm, or the shoulder rather. And this is also, and then right after that I had to rip it all out because, as you can see here, I had to pleat it and make a slit and then attach the cuffs, and it never told you to leave a slit open, so I had to rip all of that out, sew in this bias tape, which you can see that I did before when I held it up to the camera, and then attach the sleeve, the cuff, and make a pleat. So in this clip you can see I am attaching the cuff to the sleeve. I have already opened up a slit, added the bias binding to it, and then I'm stitching, and I've pleated it. And then I'm going to stitch here and then turn it and stitch in the ditch. So in this clip, I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. I'm going to stitch the cuff on with right sides together, and then I'm going to turn it, press it, and then it actually says to top stitch it, not to stitch in the ditch. So I top stitch it, and then it wants you to top stitch all the way around the edges of the cuff. So here you can see I'm holding up to the camera the finished sleeve cuff with the top stitching that I did. So here you can see I have a somewhat finished shirt. I'm just trimming off some of the excess threads. So in this clip you can see I'm sewing the collar on to the neck. And so you're stitching the collar with the neckline at 3/8 inch, making sure that the folded collar edge is not caught. Turn the collar with right side out and use a dull pointed object to turn the corners, and then you're going to top stitch all the way around. I'm honestly not sure if I top stitched all the way around the top of the collar, but I at least top stitched where you would stitch in the ditch normally, and so that's top stitched. But I don't know that that would have looked all that good if I had top stitched all the way around the entire collar. I don't know about that. Hi everybody, welcome back. So now I'm going to go over my final thoughts on this project for the medieval shirt that I made for my boyfriend. And you just saw the reveal with him wearing it. Obviously it does not at all fit my dress form because it's huge. So as far as the pattern was concerned, it was a very easy pattern to work with. I'm really happy with the results. I felt like this shirt came out probably one of the best things that I've ever made. It came out really well. There was one thing that I did notice about the pattern. So it tells you to stitch the side seam of the arm. And in the picture, it shows you stitch it all the way to the end. And then on the next page, it tells you that you're supposed to have a slit in it. So nowhere on the pattern was it marked for you to not sew it all the way down, and it didn't tell you not to sew it all the way down. In fact, the picture shows that you sew it all the way down and finish the edges. So I did that, and then on the next page, I realized that I had to rip all those stitches out, make a slit, and then put the bias tape in the slit to finish that edge. So that was the only issue that I found with this pattern, was that it did not tell you not to close it, and then all of a sudden you're not supposed to close it. The only other thing that I have noticed about this pattern too is that the cuffs are huge. I don't know what giant's got wrists this big, but he does not have wrists that big. So I just think that maybe these are a little bit oversized, and if I had known that, I would have made a smaller size for the cuff. And maybe even for the sleeve, because it goes all the way from one side to the other. So maybe it's just a sleeve thing. Otherwise, like I said, I really like it. I love the fabric that I chose for it. It's really nice. It's a linen. It's really flowy. And I really like it. So, okay, so to discuss my costs. This was a linen that I got from Fashion Fabrics Club. It's 100% linen, and I bought 3 yards, and the total cost of that was $51.12. Cutting time, I don't know how long it took me to cut, to be honest with you, because I didn't clock it. For sewing time, it took me about 3.5 hours to sew, approximately. So overall cost of the project, I don't know what the living wage is here. So after doing some research, I found that the living wage here in Austin, Texas, where I live, is about $24.55 an hour. That times the 3.5 hours would put you at $85.92 just for the cost of labor, plus the cost of the fabric, which was $51.12, would put you at $137.04. So I have seen comparable shirts sold at Renaissance fairs for around that price. So my price is pretty comparable to what you would pay for something that was handmade by somebody. So thank you for watching. Enjoy this clip of Nightmare and my other kitties, and I hope to see you guys again. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.